Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm an alcoholic, and thank you, Dennis, for asking me to share my strength and hope today. Right now, this moment, I'm sitting in my van and I'm on the road, and I'm living a life that, I guess I have to say, at times I feel like it's beyond my wildest dreams. At other times I don't. It's life, it's real, and it's full of challenges. But at the end of the day, it's amazing, and I feel like, I have been given a new life, not an old life, not my old one, and I don't want it back. I don't want my old life back. For a long time I could not imagine what recovery would give me. And I really wanted to, when I came into AA, I was just at my rock bottom. I felt like I was dying. I had been drinking for many, many years. I was 50 years old and I'd been to rehab a couple of times, and neither time had I even heard once. And, I'd been into AA too, not that often, but never did I hear once that it was the first drink that did the damage. So I wasn't ready, and, I couldn't imagine a life without alcohol. I could not imagine that I'd ever laugh again, and I'd completely forgotten that I hadn't laughed for many, many years, and even jumping to getting sober, we went out to dinner one time, and here was my son. We're out at dinner and I was sober, and I feel like crying actually. I'm a bit emotional when I think about it. And he took my photo and I said, "What are you doing?" And he turned around and he said to me, "Mum, I'm taking a photo of you laughing." He hadn't seen me laugh for a long time. So here's me all these years drinking and having my life controlled by drink, but not realizing that my life was controlled by drink. That I thought I needed alcohol to have a good time, but I was way beyond that. My son showed me that alcohol could never offer me what life without it can. For me, I had to find a higher power, and I call God today. And, this is what my journey is all about. But very quickly, my drinking was progressive over years. I was a binge drinker in my early 20s. Well, I started drinking. I picked up my first drink, I don't know, around 10, 11 when I was babysitting. At the movies, I stole some cold duck out of, I don't know who remembers that, out of my parents' fridge and, took it to the movies, and, the police pulled me out. I was very young at that time, but in my early 20s it was binge drinking, and I never ever realised that I just didn't drink to have like others. I didn't even know I wasn't drinking like others then. I drank for effect. I always drank for effect. And when I say effect, I couldn't articulate what it was doing to me. All I wanted was a good time. And, in my early 30s, I got married in my late 20s, 28. I had my second child in my 30s, and that's where I see the progression of the disease. I became a daily drinker just after I gave birth to my second son. And I could see now I didn't drink much while I was pregnant, but it was progressing in me. And, I actually chose to bottle feed simply so I could drink when he was born. So I didn't know I was in the grips of a progressive illness then, and I didn't even know it was an illness. So fast forward that again, and, I became a daily drinker. Just suddenly one day, out of the blue, just suddenly, I felt like a drink, and, it was all about me. Poor me, here was I. I was a stay-at-home mum, and I was on my own, and I didn't have family to help me, and my husband was at work, and he was working really hard to support us, and he did long hours, and I was thinking about me. And I picked up a drink one afternoon, and this is where my disease progressed, and I became a daily drinker. And I crossed an invisible line that went from wanting to drink to needing to drink, and I didn't know that then. So in the beginning it was okay. My husband had come home and I was okay, and dinner was ready and all that. But, eventually when he'd come home I'd be drunk, and I was like that for many years. I just functioned, and the alcohol ruled my life. Alcoholism was in me, alcohol was in the bottle, but it was, for me, I thought it was about the alcohol. I needed, and I will just say that without it, I don't know how I would have got through though. But it changed, and it kept changing, and it got stronger, and it controlled my life. It didn't only control my life, it controlled my boys, my husbands, all those, I can feel it now. It controlled, everyone. And as I'm sharing this with you, I get to see how it extended out to not only my immediate family, but my sisters and, just everyone, my father. And I never saw it quite like that before, as I see it right now when I'm sharing this with you. And that's just the way it is. And this is alcoholism. This is what it does. And here's me thinking that I hadn't hurt anybody because I was a stay-at-home drinker, Mind you, I in the end I stopped going out. I couldn't. I was too drunk. That drink, getting ready before I went out. I'd go out okay at first, and in the end I was too drunk to go out, and I would drink at home. I lost my husband to leukemia. Let's see, about when my son was in year 12, so my sons grew up with a drunk as a mum, their whole life. So they didn't know any other way. And 3 years after my husband passed away, my drinking took on another turn like you wouldn't believe. I didn't have any more because he was sick for 7 years. So in that 7 years, I spent my whole time trying to control this drinking and, all of that in case we're at hospitals and this and that. And, it was controlling me the whole time, and I never knew that. I never knew that, alcohol controlled everything I did, whether it's to pick up the boys, whatever it was. It was, first thing in the morning, my first thought was, what did I do last night? Am I in trouble today? Did I say something? My second thought was, what do the boys have on? What have I got on today? When can I get my first drink? My next thought was, well, okay, all of that ticked off. Then what? My next thought was, well, how much alcohol have I got in the house? Where did I shop the night before, the day before, or the day before that? Because I always bought in bulk. My biggest fear was running out. So, it controlled my life, and it controlled my family's life. And, it was an obsession for all of us. So fast forward, and, my husband had passed away, and here I was, 3 years he'd been gone, and I was going down the tube fast, and I did not. And I know you can't get sober for others, but I did not want to. I just hit my rock bottom, and I could feel that there was only a flicker left within me, and I didn't want the boys to lose me as well, and I didn't want, here's my pride kicking in, I didn't want to go as a drunk. And, I didn't understand powerlessness, and that's taken me a few years to understand that. For it to go from my head to my heart, that's the longest journey that has been there for me. I can hear everything, and it sits in my head for an awful long time. And then one day it drops, and it goes to my heart, and I go, wow, it's there forever then. So, I came into AA, and I didn't want to be an alcoholic, and I didn't want to be an AA, but this is where, Alcoholics Anonymous, the people in Alcoholics Anonymous have taught me how to live again. And it's been amazing because I needed absolutely everything. And, golly, sorry guys, because I really am having an amazing life. I came in and I didn't want to be there. I just thought it was about getting my world right out there. I thought it was about perhaps getting a job or, just being successful as the world sees success. And I had no idea it was an inside journey. I didn't even know what an inside journey was because I was totally disconnected from me. I lost me and everybody else a long time ago, and I didn't know. I had no feelings. I had nothing. There was nothing left inside of me, and I didn't understand what inside was. And when so it started. It's been a slow journey for me, and that's okay. I just wasn't one of these ones that had a pink cloud or anything like that. But I'm sober, and I developed a relationship with a high power. Someone pointed to the Serenity Prayer and said to me, "Oh my gosh, you have got to find God." And I remember freaking at that because I had an old idea of who God was, and it was a 7-year-old idea of God. And, I didn't know that or understand that, but I had a lot of prejudice. So God today, for me, my high power, and everyone is different. So I don't want that to be a prejudice for anyone, if it's a newcomer listening to this, because for me now, God is not my childhood God at all. It's not a person in the clouds, It is totally different, and we're allowed to find something different that we believe in. And for me, it's about love, and it took a long time, and it still is, learning to trust in the higher power, learning to trust in me and things that I come up with. But what's happened is Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me how to live one day at a time, and I couldn't get that in the beginning. One day at a time? But I've got to plan this and that. I don't have to plan anything. That's my high powers job. But that comes with time. All I need is to be open-minded, willing, and honest as I can be on any given day, and that changes too. So it began my journey, and I just did the suggested things. I got a sponsor who was incredible in the beginning. She spent a lot of time with me, and because the fog was very, very thick. And I got a home group, which I needed. I needed some stability, and I needed that, and I needed to do service when I was ready, and I needed to be around people. This disease will isolate me, and it does that in my thinking. And, so very, very slowly, and the program of AA, I'm not one, that the meetings, I need the meetings. I do need the meetings to connect, but I need the program to live life. I cannot do life without the program, which involves the 12 steps. And daily I have to live in 10, 11 and 12, and I don't do that very well at times, not at all. But, if I do the best I can on any given day, for me, God matches it. God gives me that power to do that, to live today. I get to see, my step one, and sometimes I fail, dreadfully, at seeing my unmanageability, but I get to see as I go along further that my life is unmanageable, and I can't manage it without a higher power. I'm never going to manage it without a higher power. I just don't have that power. God has it. Well, the higher power has it. But that is okay. I don't find that out in the beginning. I'm now 9 years sober. I've been given this gift of recovery, and I'm only just beginning to see some of that stuff. So all it's about is just doing the best I can and being willing to do things, to do the best, just do the best I can. And what it's given me is an amazing life. It's given me a life that's real. I walked through 2 years ago. I've walked through absolutely everything. I drank on my first son's 21st birthday. That was when I went out there again and understood powerlessness at a different level. I believed that I could drink that weekend and go back to AA the next day, and on the Monday, and I didn't get back for a year, and that was a miracle. I got back in it all. So I understood powerlessness then at a different level. So, since being sober this time around, when I came in and put down the drink, I was 13 I mean, I didn't go to rehab this time. I just did meeting after meeting after meeting, and slowly everything started to change. But, since coming in, I did my other son's 21st sober, 6 months in recovery. And that was amazing, and I managed to clean up, do everything. That was incredible. I've gone through sickness. I've gone through absolutely everything. The first birthday, the first Christmas, and I've also, just a couple of years ago, I went through the death of both my parents within 8 weeks of each other, and I've gone through putting them in homes and all of this. This is normal life stuff. And it happens, and it's real. And through it all, I haven't had to pick up a drink, and that's because of the fellowship in my higher power, because I can't do that on my own. And I'm not promised a life that doesn't hurt, but I'm promised a life that, I get given the power to front up, and something grows within, and I become in contact. I become present for others. I become present for me, and I love life. Not every day, don't get me wrong there. Oh my gosh, no. But I would not swap my worst day sober any day for a day drink to drink again. And I never ever dreamed that would ever be possible. So, all I ask, I just hope that someone listening to this will take away the fact that life, it's possible to have the most amazing life. We do get given this. This is a fatal illness, and I wouldn't believe that in the beginning. I thought it was fatal for other people, not me. But it is fatal, and it's very real. But, I get promised a life beyond my wildest dreams, and I couldn't even begin to know what that was until I feel it, and that comes from within me. And I can't do that stuff without the program and Alcoholics Anonymous and my higher power. So, thank you whoever's listened, and I'm just grateful today, grateful. And I used to hate that word, but I am grateful today to be sober. So thank you. I'll leave it there.